You're only 26 years old. 3 days ago, you watched your husband bleed out on the walls of your city as Spartan warriors smashed through the last line of. Today, you're standing barefoot in the ashes of what used to be your home, clutching your 3 children as tightly as you can, while Spartan officers walk among the survivors like traders inspecting animals. One of them stops in front of you. He asks your age. He asks if the children are yours. You answer softly, afraid to say the wrong thing. He scratches something into a wax tablet and walks away without giving you a hint of what he has decided about your future. That night, armed soldiers rip your children from your arms. Your 3-year-old son screams your name as he's dragged away, trying to run after you while you're being forced into a line with nearly 200 other women. You turn one last time, trying to memorize their faces, because you don't know if you will ever see them again. This is where the nightmare begins. And compared to what's coming next, death would have been kindness. Welcome to Crown and Dagger, where we uncover the darkest corners of ancient history, the ones most people are too afraid to talk about. The story you're about to hear will change how you understand Spartan warfare forever. To understand the fate of these women, we first need to understand Sparta itself. Athens created democracy, philosophy, and culture, while hiding its own barbarities behind polished words. Sparta didn't pretend. It was brutally honest about its purpose. A society engineered entirely for war. Spartan boys were taken from their families at 7 years old and raised in a system designed to break individuality and forge unquestioning soldiers. Weak infants were discarded. Pain was embraced. Violence was normal. A Spartan belonged to the state long before he belonged to himself. But the entire system rested on one brutal fact. Sparta ruled over a massive enslaved population known as the Helots, people they had conquered generations earlier. There were roughly 10 Helots for every Spartan citizen. They worked the fields, produced food, and kept daily life functioning while Spartans trained for war. And Sparta lived in constant fear of them. One rebellion could wipe them out. This fear shaped their strategy, their culture, their rituals, and how they treated conquered women. Spartans understood something other Greek states only slowly realized. If you want to destroy an enemy forever, killing their warriors is not enough. You must control their women. You must control childbirth. You must control the next generation. This was not random cruelty. It was policy. When a city fell to Sparta, the officers sorted the surviving women with cold precision. They recorded their ages, their health, their family positions, and even who their husbands had been. Then came the sorting. Some were sent to fields, some to households, and the youngest and healthiest to fates ancient writers described as worse than death. To understand why, you need to understand how ancient warfare really worked. The battle didn't end when the fighting stopped. It began there. If you kill the men but leave the women to raise their sons, the boys will grow up remembering the injustice. They will wait, they will grow, they will seek revenge. The culture survives, and the cycle of war continues. Sparta's solution was chillingly efficient. You conquer not by killing a people, but by controlling who their children become. Women of childbearing age, usually between 15 and 40, became the most important targets. Left alone, they would rebuild the enemy population. Under Spartan control, they could be used to grow Sparta's own numbers. Their fates depended on their backgrounds. Some women became helot, absorbed into the enslaved population where life was defined by endless work, physical punishment, and hereditary bondage. Children born to helots would remain helots forever, generation after generation. But elite women, the wives of commanders, the daughters of leaders, were treated differently. Not because Sparta respected them, but because they were symbols. Breaking them publicly sent a message to every city-state watching. Resist Sparta, and this will happen to your bloodline. These women were forced into marriages with Spartan citizens. Not chosen marriages. State-assigned marriages. Their new husbands were often older men, widowers, or Spartans who had failed to produce enough children for the state. The ceremonies were public, ritualized, and humiliating. Everyone understood what was really happening. Not a wedding, but a declaration of total domination. Imagine again. Your husband fought for your city just weeks ago. Now he's dead. And you are wearing wedding garments, speaking ritual words you don't believe, being handed over to the very men who murdered him. Your new role: manage his household, produce children, raise them as Spartans, watch them grow into warriors who may one day fight the survivors of your own people. This is why ancient writers said some women preferred death. Because this wasn't passive suffering. It required participation in the destruction of your own culture. But forced marriage wasn't the darkest fate. Sparta's obsession with producing strong warriors led to another system. Pairing captured women with selected men not to form families, but to create children. These weren't marriages. They were reproductive assignments. Some women were paired with Spartans to create new Spartans. Others were paired with helots to create stronger slaves. Both were considered resources. Both were considered property. Children born from these pairings entered society according to political usefulness. Citizen, servant, or permanent slave. Their mothers supported them, loved them, but lived with the agony of knowing exactly what those children represented, the erasure of their people. Then came the helot system's most feared ritual. The young Spartan men were sent into the countryside to kill helots who seemed strong, outspoken, or capable of leadership. It was not war. It was training. Helots, men or women, could be murdered at any time without cause. This kept the enslaved population terrified and ensured that no uprising could gain momentum. Captured women learned to shrink themselves. They taught their children to be silent, invisible, careful. Showing confidence or spirit could be fatal. Public humiliation was another tool of control. When Sparta won a major victory, women from conquered cities were paraded through the streets as living trophies. If they had once been noble, all the better. The contrast made the message clearer. Spartan women, known for their pride and independence, would mock them openly. Insult them. Laugh at them. Shout that their men had been weak. This wasn't just cruelty, it was deliberate psychological warfare. And these practices weren't isolated incidents. They shaped the histories of entire regions. They were enslaved for centuries. Generations of women lived, worked, and died as helots, remembering that their ancestors had once been free. Their children inherited their suffering. They inherited it too. During the war, the same patterns repeated as Sparta absorbed the populations of defeated cities. But when Sparta finally lost its dominance in the 4th century BCE, everything collapsed. Their entire society had depended on exploiting others. And when those oppressed populations finally gained freedom, they repaid Sparta with the same mercy Sparta had shown them, none. Ancient writers called the women's fates worse than death. Now you see why. Death ends pain. What Sparta inflicted did not. These women survived, but they survived inside the ruins of their old lives. They mothered children who were raised to fight for the people who killed their fathers. They served households built on the grave of their families. They lived decades in grief, fear, and silence, knowing that their suffering wasn't a tragedy, it was policy. Their names are mostly lost, their individual stories erased. But they existed, they endured, and their experiences reveal a brutal truth about ancient warfare. Women were not just victims, they were deliberate targets. Their bodies, their children, their futures, used as tools of conquest. If you believe these stories deserve to be remembered, subscribe to Crown and Dagger. Share this video. Tell these women's stories to someone who has never heard them. And let me know in the comments what you think about this chapter of history.